Hello, all of you Express Entry Law private Facebook group members, as well as those who are getting this notification in your timeline, because I am broadcasting live on my Canadian Immigration Institute business page. And as I learned last week, it's way better to broadcast on that location than in our private group, because by broadcasting it through the Canadian Immigration Institute, by broadcasting it through that business page, it's easier for you guys to share this with your friends. So if you guys have friends that are trying to figure out when the EE Live Q&A is happening, it's live now. And you can actually share this with them. So I'd encourage you to do that. Let everybody know that it's starting. And you can see from the top here, today our discussion is all about police certificates. And boy, oh boy, if there isn't an area that's more volatile that can result in your application getting refused, well, next to reference letters, it's police certificates. So we're going to cover that today. But I also want to let everybody know that I have a special guest. Altynai is one of the past alumni from the Express Entry Law private Facebook group, and she was also a subscriber in the early days to the Express Entry Complete Step-by-Step Guide to Doing It Yourself, the do-it-yourself guide that I created. And so I invited her to come and join us, and she is a permanent resident. She's one of the more recent permanent residents to Canada, and so she has agreed graciously to join us and to share her story a little bit and the experience that she's had, and really to give some practical tips on what it's been like to relocate to Canada and some of the challenges as well, which a lot of people don't talk about. Yes, Canada is the country of, unlimited hopes and dreams, but there's a lot of challenges too. And so we're going to talk about those. So yeah, those of you who are tuning in, please share the link with your friends. I'm actually going to go on right now and I'm going to pull this up on my Facebook page. Actually, hey, Stephanie, could you share it to the Express Entry Law group, this live video? Okay, all right. Hey, I don't have to do it anymore. Stephanie is going to help me with that, which is fantastic. So we'll wait for a few more people to join us. I recognize once again that this time is not always the easiest time, because there are a lot of other things going on in people's lives, including sleep, which I know it's about 3 a.m. in some parts of the world. But for those of you who appreciate that I do have a full-time job as a lawyer, an immigration lawyer, I have to be somewhat selective with when I can do this at times that are most convenient for me. So I want to thank those of you who had faith enough to join me now and are a part of this fun Express Entry Live Q&A session that we do every week. Now, for those of you who are wondering, well, Mark, when are you doing these things? I'm just going to post right here. We should be able to see here, and I'll slide this over. So today we're covering police certificates. Next week, it's going to be job offers on May the 23rd. May 28th will be the top 4 reasons for refusal, which is a real popular one. And then June 6th is immigration medicals. June 13th, proof of funds. June 20th, another should be very popular event, which is non-accompanying spouses. And then the last one before we hit summer is dependent family members and how they can actually mess up your application sometimes. So most days it is going to be on Thursday at 3 p.m., but the ones with asterisks beside, which is basically the only one left, is June the 25th. On June the 25th, that one will be at noon on that day. All right. So we have a bunch of people that are tuning in here. I'm going to get rid of this. It's always entertaining. And today is the day of police certificates. But before we get there, like I said, I'm going to start off today by asking all of you, and there's some people chiming in. Ralph, how are you doing, my friend? Ashish says, hi, Mark, you're doing a great job. Thanks, Ashish. Abhishek says, no problem. Count me one in all your sessions. Awesome. Ugo says, hi, Mark. All right, great. So share it with everybody else. Post in the comments where you're tuning in from so we can see where everybody is tuning in from all over the world. And it's always neat to see how many hemispheres of the world we can get people tuning in from. So make sure you post where you're listening from below. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull in Altynai here, which should be really fun. And she's so awesome to do this with me. I'm going to see if I can figure this out. And there she is. Okay, you are live, Altynai.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Hello, Mark. I'm really good, thank you. And hello, everyone.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
So
Thank you so
where
much for having me here today.
so where are you at? Where are you tuning in from?
I'm now based in Vancouver. I'm
Vancouver.
tuning in from Vancouver, British Columbia. Yeah.
Awesome. That's great. Okay, so where are you from and what started your express entry journey?
Um, I'm originally from Kyrgyzstan, and well, back in June 2017, I found out about the Express Entry program.
Mhm.
But honestly, I couldn't believe that such program exists where you can apply, not being in a country, from outside, and that you can just apply and become a permanent resident. And when my sister told me about the program, I couldn't even believe it. So I took time to discover more about the program, and when I learned more about it, I was really surprised that actually I qualify and I can apply. So June 2017, that's when my journey started. When I slowly started collecting documents and yeah, and learning more about Express Entry.
Just about 2 years ago. That is
Right.
amazing. And I think one of the things people need to realize is that you do need to be patient, right? It doesn't,
Exactly.
although the processing times sometimes go really quickly for some people, and
Yeah.
other times you have to be patient and it takes time to collect all your documents properly. And it's important not to rush it too quick. And so
Yeah.
obviously Express Entry has been evolving since those early days. And somehow or another, you stumbled upon our group and
Yeah.
my do-it-yourself guide. So how did that happen?
So as I started learning more about the Express Entry, I was just googling and I was watching all the videos on YouTube. And one of the first videos that came up was yours, Express Entry Live. And honestly, I was just listening to it everywhere. I just had my headphones and I was not even watching the video sometimes. So I was just listening to the podcast. Oh, sorry, to the video every time, and I just learned so much from it. Then it was the time when I found out about the group on Facebook. I joined the group, and I found so much support in that group. With so many people involved, and also so many people asking questions that were very relevant to me as well. And I found answers there from other people, and then also you were answering some of the questions as well. So I was writing all my questions too, and finding answers that I couldn't find on official websites. And sometimes it was, I mean, on official websites, there is information, but
Yeah.
not always that you can find all the answers to your questions. So it was great, and I found so much support in that group. Then it was the time when I found out about the podcast as well.
Hmm.
So it was the time when I already had my documents in hand,
Yeah.
and I decided that I will just. So this is the time when I can already apply. Um, and I have taken my test, IELTS. Um, yeah, but then I faced this challenge that the the forms were a bit challenging. They were not really clear, and I didn't really know if this information, if this document that I collected is right, if my knock is relevant to the knock that. If my profession is relevant to the
Yes.
knock on the website. So I had so many questions and so many also challenging situations that I decided for myself. I want to buy the podcast, the guide,
Oh, yes.
and and I will just want to have this guidance how to apply and get this detailed information and double check if I'm doing everything right, because I just had this one chance basically to apply.
And that's exactly it. Because that's one thing people are starting to realize is that when you are submitting your application, for some of you, it may be a one try and that's it. And if you don't
Yeah,
get it right, it could mean the difference in immigrating to Canada or not. And you mentioned, I'm just going to share my screen quickly here for those who are watching. This is what Altynai is talking about. This is the Express Entry Complete Step-by-Step Guide to Doing It Yourself. And Altynai recognizes, I think as many of you do, that this is an evolving course. So it has gotten better and better. And it's actually even better than when Altynai first subscribed to it. And but this course is it's a step-by-step guide to basically doing it yourself. And so I've shift back now here screens back to Altynai. And so you decided, I'm going to check out this crazy guide and see if this is even worth it. So what was your experience?
Yeah, first of all, I just found all your videos very helpful. And I thought, well, if your videos are helpful and the group is helpful, then of course the podcast or the guide must be incredible. So I just decided to purchase the guide. And honestly, what I found very helpful was that the structure, that it was literally step by step. The way I was filling out the application, I knew step by step. I knew that okay, this is the way I have to do. Even though I had all the documents in hand, all the information, I knew probably I'm doing it right. But I wanted this confirmation. I wanted this guidance, and but sometimes actually there were questions that were very challenging as well, and all some of the forms, for example, with the police certificates as well.
Yeah.
I asked you so many questions. Yeah, like there were police certificates or travel history. Correct, no, everything. So and the guide really has really helped me, and I actually purchased it twice because when I filled it out once, when I used it once, it was not enough. I mean, 1 month was not enough, and then I decided that I'm going to invest more in my immigration because I want to do it right. So I purchased it second time as well, and it was enough. I then just sent it away.
Awesome. That's great. And so you had an opportunity to use that as a little bit of a reassurance that you were doing things the right way. And in all honesty, many people book consultations with me just to get that peace of mind. But I created the guide for that purpose so that people would have a source that they could trust of information. And like you said, many people who purchase it already have all their documents. They've done tons of research. They've gone to the websites. They've done all those things. And when you first start going through the guide, it's a little like, wow, this is pretty simple. This is pretty elementary. I don't know if this is worth it. I know all this stuff. Well, the reality is it builds and grows and adds on each section in complexity as the Express Entry becomes more complex. And so it's designed for people who know nothing about Express Entry all the way up to people who need those very, very specific things answered. And it's interesting because I've actually, my member, the member resource section, I'll share my screen again. The member resource section that I have for the course has grown exponentially. So yes, there's step-by-step for every part of the process, but the member resource section, based on what people have been asking me and the common questions, and that's where really the some of the most important parts are, is all of these extra videos on all of the specific topics, including police certificates, which we're going to talk about today. So jumping forward, so tell us, when did you get your passport request? How long did it take you to get it?
Yeah, it was fairly quickly, actually. I applied, so I sent away my documents on 20th of March, 2018, and I got my my passport request on 21st of June, 2018. So 3 months, and I got it. Yeah. Also, one thing that I wanted to just share was is a consultation with you. So after I had all my documents as well, after all the guide that I have passed, I just wanted another reassurance, and also I had a couple of questions that were just very relevant to me or to my situation, and I had this 30-minute consultation with you, which was great, because in 30 minutes we have covered so much, and we have covered police certificates as well, the diplomas, and there were a couple of things that you told me that the translation was not correct. So a couple of things that I had to change as well, and it was great because it was great that you told me and that we had this consultation, because otherwise maybe my application wouldn't be successful.
Yeah,
Right?
and there's such small little issues that you would never imagine that an officer would have an issue with it. But
Yeah,
the officer says, well, we're not refusing your application on the merits. Like, we're sure you
right.
probably qualify, but it's just incomplete. And then they return
Mhm.
it, and then you're back in the pool. And then
Yeah,
maybe your comprehensive ranking system score drops 5 points because
yeah.
you've had a birthday, and maybe you no longer qualify. And we've seen
Mhm.
the rounds of invitations. Like, they've been hovering around 450 now. What was your comprehensive ranking system score when you applied?
475.
Okay, that's right.
Yeah.
So you're still in that range, but some people that are hovering maybe around 440, well, they may have gotten
Mm,
an invitation to apply, and boy, it's not going back down that low. Well, if it does, it's going to be this big draw that they do because there's so many people in the pool. So
yeah.
that's really cool. So you got your passport request in a little, right around 3 months. And then how long did it take you to determine, when you're going to travel to Canada and where you were going to go?
Well, yeah, at the time I was working, and I was based in Eastern Europe, and I was working for an international organization. So it took me time to think when I can actually go and quit my job there. And so it took me about like half a year, I guess.
Hmm.
Yeah, so I decided to move to Vancouver in mid-January. That's when I arrived and became officially a PR.
Wonderful. Okay, so you're now in Canada, and it's, we're pushing 5 months now. So tell us about your settlement experience. How has it been for you kind of getting integrated? And this is important. And be honest. I want you to talk about your experience
Yeah,
honestly.
sure. Well, I mean, it's been challenging, honestly,
Mhm.
because Vancouver is one of the most expensive cities in Canada,
Mhm.
or
Yes.
maybe it is the most expensive city in
Yep,
Canada.
it is.
Um, that's why my settlement fund has been very helpful
Yes.
so far.
Yes.
At the moment, so I haven't found a job in my
Mhm.
area yet,
Yes.
but I'm looking, and I have a feeling that I'm in the right way, because I'm volunteering with international organizations here,
Yes.
and yeah, so also I'm establishing networks as well,
Awesome.
um, which is very
Mhm.
helpful here in Canada.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I think it's been challenging for me to find something in my field, because there are not that many organizations focusing on peace building and conflict resolution here in Vancouver.
Right.
That's why I decided to start applying for jobs in Ottawa and Toronto as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
Um, and but I have had many interviews with various organizations.
Mhm.
Um, some of them said that I was the top candidate, but I still have to work on my Canadian experience.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah,
That
so
that's awesome. And you've shared some, and I want the listeners to listen to this. This is really important. So one, Altynai, she knew what she was looking for, and she's being patient. And she didn't just take the first food counter attendant job at McDonald's or whatever presented itself. She has been very targeted and very strategic in how she's going about it. And yes, she has not yet quite found that job that she's looking for, but it's because of the settlement funds that the government forces you to have that is going to give you the flexibility to be patient and to do the things you need to do, like volunteering in that industry where you're giving free service to make connections, prove to people your skill sets, and then that right opportunity will come. And I know, Altynai, it will. It
thank
will. And
you.
as you're patient, you will have an opportunity. And you're also now starting to learn how important it is to cast your net very broadly and to make
Mhm.
sure that when you're applying for jobs that you actually look across the country, especially, and just to clarify, Altynai's background is really quite a narrow field. And so it's not like you're an engineer or you're uh, uh, software, whatever, that kind of technician or developer. This is a very narrow niche, and so she knows what she needs to do to get to where she needs to be. And getting those interviews, even if you don't get those jobs, you learn every single time you go through
Mhm.
the process, and you leave a positive impression with those people. So you're doing exactly what you need to do. Very cool.
Thank you. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Well, this is
Thank you.
this has been great. Do you have any tips or strategies or just any thoughts or pieces of advice that you can have for the listeners, based on your experience going through this process, that you'd like to share with them?
Yeah, one thing that came to my mind was I was sharing my story of settling here in Vancouver is when you arrive as a new permanent resident, um, go check out the immigration service offices and see what kind of services they offer to you. They can offer. I when I just arrived, I did go and I learned. I tried to learn more about what they can offer, but at the same time, I couldn't really find if there were people who can offer me. I mean, who can help me in my field with my CV, with my cover letter.
Yeah.
But only now, after a few months, I found out that there is a program for skilled, advanced, and qualified professionals
Mm.
on a different level. And now they're sending me all the
Oh,
vacancies. They're helping me with my CV and cover letter. It's been so amazing, and I'm like,
mm.
I wish I knew about you
In the
before when I
beginning.
just arrived in the beginning, but I had no idea. So one thing that I would recommend is to go out and explore um, uh, who can help you, and don't be afraid to ask for advice, because there are so many organizations here that are willing to help new immigrants.
Awesome. And you know what? Yes, that's one of the things I want to give the government full credit for, and really praise them and recognize the efforts that they go to help permanent residents integrate, and the resources that are out there that are for free. And there's not too many countries out there that do that. So not only do
Mhm.
we have express entry, which is that direct pathway to permanent residence, but there's also support. Now, nothing is perfect, and you have to show initiative. You have to put the effort in yourself. But I know the vast majority of people who get their confirmations of permanent residence and come to Canada are highly driven, motivated people. So the future is so bright, and I'm so grateful. For those of you, I'm going to share my screen again. But for those of you who want to get a little advice from Altynai, a number of months ago when she was first going through the process, you can actually go to the YouTube channel, and I have her testimonial. Why I have advertisements on these YouTube channels, I don't know how I ended up doing this, but anyways, there was a video that she created just for me and the Express Entry Do It Yourself guide. So I'll put a link to it in the show notes, and she talks a little bit more about her experience working through the guide from the perspective of someone who is not yet a permanent resident. So I'll let people know about that. But very cool. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the time that you took to share your story. It's a wonderful story, and I know it gives a lot of hope to people who are going through the process that you are. So
Thank you so much, Mark, and I wish best of luck to everyone out there who's trying to get to Canada, applying through Express Entry, and I wish them best of luck. I know how it feels, and everything will be great. Just keep trying.
awesome.
It'll work out.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All right. We'll see you. See you
Thank you.
soon.
See you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
All right. Well, that was awesome. It's so cool. I love to have people come and talk about their stories, share their experiences, And obviously no two people are the same. There's going to be people that have all different kinds of experiences in their journey coming to Canada. Some have to fight so very, very hard. Others, it's just really easy and simple. But one thing's for certain, no two people are alike, and no two people's journeys are the same. And that's one of the challenges I have online when people go through, and Altynai is awesome. She's a great example. Well, she could share her exact experience going through the process, but you could do exactly as she has done and not get the same result, whether that's your application being processed the same time, whether it even being approved in the same way. Now, hopefully, I think she would have done everything correct, but sometimes people do things in a way that they feel is correct, and an officer approves it, and then they assume that's perfect. It's great. And then they go sharing their experiences with everybody else. But the reality is maybe that officer missed something. And today, our topic, let's see if I can pull it up again here, if I can find my little heading right there. The topic today is police certificates. Super volatile, super crazy. So that's the topic of today, and we're going to cover that a little bit. I'm going to share some insight, and this is actually the insight that's just about to the level of the course. But it's a way that I can try and give a topic and give it a little bit more focus to these EE Live Q&As. So I'm going to take a few minutes here to talk about police certificates. Then I'm going to talk about the questions related to police certificates that were sent in via email to my legal assistant, Stephanie. And for those of you who would also like to send in questions, remember that your questions need to be focused. And I'm going to pull up this here. They need to be focused if you're emailing them in on the topic of the day. So I'm only going to deal with emailed questions related to police certificates. If you have a question that relates, and then that way I'm rewarding the people who are here in person, but also keeping the questions very, very specific. So police certificates is the topic for today, and those are the ones that we're going to be addressing today. And then also, once we've had a chance to go through that, then I'm going to open it up for all of you awesome people to post your questions live right here in the comments. And there's already a ton of them going. Oh my goodness, look at this. I see Ezine here. Hi, Mark. I'm Ezine watching from Colehurst. Oh my goodness. Colehurst is it's a little town like 10 minutes from Lethbridge. So she's like right here. I could reach out and just about shake her hand from here. So welcome, Ezine. That's so cool. And then we've got people who are already posting questions. Hold off on the questions, and I will address those at the time when I give you the word to post them. Okay? All right. And just scrolling back here, I just want to see where we've got people tuning in from. So, Kojo's in Oslo. Kojo, do you know that I am Norwegian by ancestry? So Holfi is Norwegian. Awesome. Syed is in Morocco. Harry's India. That's awesome, Harry. Good on you for being here so early in the morning. Uzma's Pakistan. Fantastic. Deb's Nepal. So we've got a lot of you awesome people tuning in from all over. And I just wanted to give a quick shout out. Saif is Algeria. Very cool. All right. So, and Parth is India. Now everybody's posting where they're from. Very cool. Okay. I better stop with the acknowledgements of the comments because I need to get right to the topic of today. It's going to be fairly short and fairly concise, but police certificates. These are dangerous. These are so volatile. So I'm going to share my screen with you, and I'm going to share a couple resources and sources of information that you have to pay super close attention to without any reservation. Okay. So shifting over here, I'm going to remove this so it's not blocking my screen there. And so right here is the Completeness Check website. And this is the source of all information, well, at least the vast majority of information related to your documents. So when you go through here, one of the main topics, the mandatory documents right here are police certificates. And so we're going to look at a couple things. We're going to come back to translation of documents because sometimes police certificates come back in a language other than English or French. But the mandatory documents right off the bat, medical, and here's our police certificates. So right off the bat, what do you need for police certificates? Well, it's pretty simple. If we go down here, the information is laid out very carefully, and I'm just going to highlight it for you guys. Okay? So you have to provide police certificates for every country that you have lived in for at least 6 months in a row within the last 10 years. And that's actually right down here at this section right here. And I'm going to put it up to the top. So it's mandatory for every country except Canada. If you're here, you don't need to provide those. Immigration will let you know if they do. And when do they need you to provide them? Well, if they do a simple name search and do a non-fingerprint search and they come up with a hit for someone who has the same name as you, that's one of the triggers that then could require you to go and get an RCMP clearance. But you don't have to do it up front. But you can see here, 6 months or more right here in a row within the last 10 years. But understand that if you have any time before the age of 18, you don't need to include that. That doesn't apply. All right. So if you live in a country and you lived there for 10 years or more, or even 6 months or more, but it was before you turned 18, then you don't have to worry about that. At any time, understand, even though they're looking back 10 years, maybe you're 30 and they're looking back to 20 and you've spent time somewhere else when you're 18 and 19. Understand that this is the initial upfront requirements for the upfront. You can see right here, police certificates. At any time, an officer can come back and ask you to provide police certificates for all of the countries that you've lived in for 6 months or more back to the age of 18. They have the ability to do that. So just understand, okay? Now, focusing on where you need to provide. We know where, right here, but how long are they valid? When do they expire? So for countries where you no longer reside, the police certificate must have been issued after the last time that you stayed in that country for 6 months or more in a row. So if you've got a police certificate from 3 years ago for Pakistan and you've never returned there, then that police certificate is still valid. Even though the police certificate itself may say that it expires at a certain stage, it's still okay. Okay. And you can see that that's set out right here in the next bullet point, even if they have an expiry date that is passed. Okay. So if you're not in the country, and understand that it also must have been issued after the last time that you stayed in the country. And sometimes that can be difficult if it was issued a day or two before you actually left. And so if I'm reading this very, very clearly, it says after you've left that country. So one of the ways that I deal with this is if the police certificate was issued before I left the country, and it has been more than 6 months since I was there, if it was issued after you left the country, then it's going to remain valid. But if you got it issued, say, a week or a month before you actually left the country, and it's been 6 months or more, and this isn't immigration rules, this is just the way I do it. If it's been over 6 months since that police certificate was issued, then I will often see from my client if they're able to actually get an updated one after they've left, just to be 100% certain. Now, it's always within the discretion of an officer. It would be pretty cruel and unusual if an officer refused your application because you got your police certificate in person in your country and then you left the next day. So technically it was issued before you left, but if some countries, the only way you can get them sometimes is in person. So that would be a pretty cruel and heartless interpretation. But it's always up to that officer. So I don't deal in probabilities. I deal in possibilities. So if there's a possibility an officer could say, well, you actually were still in the country for a day after your police certificate was issued, and it's been more than 6 months since it was issued, that officer could technically take a harsh position and say it doesn't meet the requirements. So keep that in mind. Okay. All right. Okay. So police certificates, as we indicated there. So what do you need to provide? All right. And this is the part where it's just hidden. It's so hidden. People don't realize it. They don't even recognize it. I'm going to actually talk with immigration about this because I think it's really unfair that the explanation for police certificates is not more clear. Because if you go to your own personal document checklist, you'll see that it doesn't give a lot of information. It just directs you back to a specific link, which is this one, but we'll get there in a second. But this is the key right here. Police certificates need to be a scan of the original police certificates in color. Okay. This in color part is the one that caught one of my clients. So, and I told this before, this is a situation where I truly realized that IRCC is cruel and heartless and just doesn't have a soul when it comes sometimes to processing these applications. Now, hopefully immigration isn't looking at this directly, but it's a reality and it's a fair comment, because I had a client who uploaded a scanned copy of the original police certificate, but it was in black and white and not color. And it was a police certificate from Germany. And so the problem was that when we received the office in our the police certificate, the file in our office, it was too big. It was more than 4 megabytes. So my assistant, not knowing, she printed it, but she printed it in black and white and then rescanned it into separate documents for each country, which is the way police certificates are requested now. Before, they used to be bundled all together, but not anymore. Well, because it was black and white, her application got returned. Okay. And in the case of that client, obviously she wasn't happy. And so I gave her all her money back and she ended up refiling her application on her own. And that's the only time it's ever happened in my life. But I can tell you that never again do I or my staff ever not follow what's instructed here explicitly. Okay. So you can see here, and this is another thing that creates a lot of confusion. Certified true copies and unauthorized copies are unacceptable and will result in the application being rejected as incomplete. So what that means is some police certificates come in the form of a different language, but in many cases, when we're submitting paper applications, we actually want to provide a certified true copy. So someone is saying, yes, this is a true copy of the original document and I'm submitting it, but we're submitting these electronically. So by its very nature, it's digital. It's not a true copy. And so when it comes to police certificates, you must submit a scan of the original one in color, not a certified copy. So be careful, be wary. Okay, the next issue that adds complexity to this, and this is a high-level tip that I'm giving you guys, so hopefully you appreciate it. If you go back up here and your document is actually in a different language, then there are specific instructions that relate to translations. So I went zipping by it here, but the translation of documents, this is the instructions right here. And so if it's not in English or French, then you must provide a copy of the original document as well as the translation by a certified translator. That's someone in your country that is certified to do that. And if it's in a language other than English or French, you must provide, this is what you need to have with every single document. And Altynai mentioned this in her consult that she had with me, that I caught this in her application. And I said, you need to be careful because your affidavit isn't correct. So you need the English or French translation. Great, that's a no-brainer. Then an affidavit from the person who completed the translation saying, yes, I translated this. This is a true translation from Russian to English. And then a certified photocopy of the original document. Do you see the confusion here? So this, if you followed this and didn't pay attention to the police certificate ones, then you could run into problems. So what does this intuitively mean? In some cases, if you wanted to be 100% certain, you'd include a certified photocopy of the original to comply with the translation of documents requirement. And then if you go down to the police certificates again, you would actually include here a scan of the original police certificate in color as well. So now realistically speaking, you can see here, it does tell you in the actual translations that you only need a certified photocopy of the original, but don't believe it. Okay, so that's kind of the overview. Now the question falls to, where do I know what my country requires, or what are the essential elements for the police, like basically the instructions, not elements, but what are the instructions? How do I know where to get it for my country? Well, that's where you can go here. So when you're on your document checklist and it's been generated, it will then direct you back to this site. And in here, you'll see it talks about the same things that we've talked about: who you can get them for, who needs them, times when you don't need to provide them. And then right here is a nice link, find out how to get a police certificate. And so here is a drop-down menu where you can choose your country. And you need to pay very close attention. Not only do you need to obviously provide an original copy scan of the original in color, but if you go to some countries like Australia and we click find out how to apply, you will see that there may be multiple police certificates that you need. So do I need a police certificate for permanent residence? Yes, you do. The Australian national, as well as traffic histories for Queensland, if you've lived in Queensland, or full license history search for residents of Victoria only. If you miss these ones here, it can result in your application getting returned. And not can, there's a high degree of likelihood. We see it all the time. So please, please read everything carefully. And as you're scrolling down, there are specific instructions for citizens of Australia that live in Australia. Then there's instructions for citizens that, for non-citizens, if you're not a citizen of Australia, but you live in Australia, and it's the same for every country. And so if you follow those instructions, and they also have them for if you live outside of Australia as a foreign national, and there's also if you live outside of Australia, which I skipped through, if you are an Australian national. So pay close attention to that. And then the last one that I will show you, I'll just backtrack here. I'm going to type in Canada. And I already explained this, and they told us that you don't need to provide it. So if you click here, do I need to provide police certificate with my application for permanent residence? And this is for Canada. The answer is no. Okay, so that's essentially it. But if you're requested to do it, then here's the instructions on how to do it. Okay, both inside and outside. All right, so that is it, guys. Hopefully that was helpful, but police certificates can be extremely volatile. And the key is just to follow the instructions explicitly, really carefully, and make sure that you are not allowing one stone to go unturned when it comes to reading the instructions. All right. Okay, so now I'm going to jump quickly to individuals that have sent in questions for me here. And let's take a look. Okay, so this question is from Muhammad. And Muhammad says, and actually I'll just put this back up there so everybody knows what topic we're talking about today. Hi, Mark. As I heard in groups like some people post that there must be dates. Must be dates cover on PC, but I also saw so many PCs without covering dates of staying. Does it affect? Oh, okay. Okay. So I think what Muhammad is asking here is, does the police certificate need to be dated? And I'll be honest, it's important that the police certificate is dated, because how else can the government determine if it's been issued after the last time you left there, or that it has not been issued for more than 6 months ago? So yes, a date on your police certificate is an important component, a very, very important component. That's a great question. All right, the next question, this one is from Harbhajan, and he says, Dear Mark, greeting. I have one question. I've been working in Ghana, West Africa, for about 5 months, 15 days in 2015. Do I need a police certificate for that also? Well, we've looked at the requirements. If it has not 6 months, then you do not 6 months in a row, then you don't have to provide a police certificate for Ghana if you don't have 6 months there. Can an officer come back and ask you? Yes, but they can't refuse it if you have not stayed there or been in that country for at least 6 months in a row. Now, I'll give you a little practice pointer, a little high-level tip. If my client, it's not a big deal, it's easy to get the police certificate, sometimes I'll go ahead and have them get it anyways if they're right at the 5 to 6 month range. Obviously 6 months, 100%. But if you're 5 and over, sometimes I'll talk to the client and I'll say, how hard is it to get that? And they'll say, well, it's not terribly difficult. So then at that stage, I may say, well, just go ahead and get it. There's no harm in doing it, and we'll just include it. And if an officer comes back and says they want it, voila, you've already provided it. But that's only if it's not, because this is specifically not a requirement for Harbhajan. Okay. All right. And you know what? I've got a few more questions here from people, but they don't relate to police certificates. So we will postpone those. If you've sent me a question and you've sent it to Stephanie, and I'll just post right here. If you have a written question that you want to send right there, you can send it to stephanie@stringham.ca, and don't forget to put EE Live Q&A in the subject line. But please remember, and I'll go back up here and I'll pull this up, that if you're emailing the questions to me, they need to relate specifically to the topic. So today was police certificates. Next week is job offers in Canada. All right. Okay. So we'll pull this one off. Fantastic. And we'll shrink that one down. All right. So now is the time where I'm going to answer live questions. So we have approximately 15 minutes left for all you awesome people who are now, and these questions can be related to anything about Express Entry. Okay. So, Johanna says, hi, Mark, does one need an ETA after receiving a confirmation of permanent residence and issuance of entry visa? No, you don't. If you have an actual visa imprinted in your passport, then obviously you don't need an ETA. If at the time in which your confirmation of permanent residence is issued, if you're from an ETA required country, then they take care of issuing that at the same time when you submit your passports, or you provide the information to finalize your confirmation of permanent residence. When they do that, the electronic travel authorization is automatically assessed and applied to your passport, that passport that you have used for the purposes of your Express Entry. Great question. Awesome. So anyone else who's listening now you can post your questions. I will go back up a little bit. Okay, Sudhir says, I have 5 years experience plus a master's plus electrical engineer. Figure out other requirements. Okay, not quite sure what your question is, Sudhir, but the most important part you've omitted there is your language test results. And as everybody knows, if you're outside of Canada and you don't have at least an 8 in listening and a 7 in everything else on your IELTS, you don't even have a prayer. Okay, let's see who else we have here. Other questions. Okay, Pawan says, my question is regarding Wes. So my Indian mark sheets, without the surname, but on my passport, the last name is added now. How can I send a Wes form with last name or without last name? Okay, when it comes to the educational credential assessments, the vast majority of situations, tons of people in India in particular, their names are never complete, or there's constant changes, and it's really, really hard to keep track of everything. So what I do is, in those circumstances, you can't make any changes other than try to provide an explanation. Explain, okay, I now have my last name, but my first name was all that was needed when I obtained my educational credentials, and that's all that you can do in those circumstances. Okay. All right, now the questions are starting to pile in. Okay, so Parth says, my parents gifted me money in January. Okay, so that's about 5 months ago. If funds are kept in the account for 6 months or more, do we need a gift deed for it, or keeping them for 6 months is fine? This is where there is no explanation. Like, there is no answer or direction for this anywhere on the IRCC site. There just isn't. So in your situation, Parth, what I do is, if it was truly gifted funds and they're not yours from your own income, then I would include it always, even if you've had the funds for 7 or 8 months. So I would get the gift deed and I would include it, just out of an abundance of caution, because I'd never ever want something as small as that to result in my application getting returned. Okay, Saif says, why is it taking so long to get the background checks completed? 6 months is a long time. I agree. And it all depends on the country that you're coming from. Canada has to work collaboratively with other countries for them to release information on your security and background screening. And so if the other country isn't cooperating and not giving information to Canada, well, in many cases, it's not Canada's fault. It's that other country. And so some countries, it's just recognized that it just takes a long, long time. And there's not much that you can do differently about it. So that's pretty much it, Saif. Okay, Ahmed says, hi, Mark. Hi, Ahmed. Rohit says, if we apply for a program at a university after we become permanent residents, do we still need to give IELTS academic? Each program has their own requirements. So in terms of IELTS academic, usually that's a requirement when the university is admitting you to show that, well, it's one of the things that they look at, both from the standpoint of the study permit for immigration as well as the admittance to the university. So in some cases, universities may want to see that there's a minimum language level in order to be accepted to it. But as a permanent resident of Canada, very, very rarely will a university actually request someone to go through language testing unless they have a reason for doing it. So I'm waving to my friend here who he's coming for a meeting with me at 8 o'clock in about 8 minutes here. He's I got the window on the other side, so he was waving at me. It's actually quite funny. All right. So the next thing that we have here, Sadiq says, "Hi, sir. Please tell me the minimum IELTS band required for express entry." Well, I can tell you the minimum IELTS band, the minimum, and this is where you need to make sure you understand what you're asking. The minimum required for express entry is 6. So it's 6 across the board, which is a CLB 7 on the Canadian language benchmark. That's the minimum to get your profile into the pool. But I can tell you that unless you have at least a Canadian language benchmark of 9, which is 8 in listening and 7 in the other 3 abilities, reading, writing, speaking, you don't have a prayer. All right, you're just never going to rank high enough to get an ITA in today's world. Ahmed says, "I live in Edmonton. How can I meet you in person?" Come on down. It's just a short drive south, and I would be delighted to meet you in person. Okay, Parth says, "So can I get the gift deed made after I get the ITA, or it should be dated on the day when I got the money?" Well, you're not going to backdate it. There's no point in doing that. You can just make sure, obviously when you have a gift deed, usually you're gifting the money and then you're transferring it. So you might just want to do it in such a fashion that the money, you can say the money that was transferred on this day, 5 months ago, is that basically that money was gifted to us, love and affection, irrevocable, for the sole purpose of for using it to settle in Canada. And so that's probably what I would do, Parth. But you don't need to backdate it and create this fiction that it was actually created back when the money was transferred. Okay. All right. We'll keep soaring through here. Next question is Ardana. Ardana says, "Hello, Mark. My husband's employer is applying for his work permit." Cool. Intercompany transfer. Awesome. "And I will be getting an open work permit." Fantastic. "We have an EE profile created with 436. Will Canadian work experience for both of us will help boost our CRS?" Absolutely. 100%. If your husband is being transferred as a intercompany transfer, usually that's someone with specialized knowledge. He could be a senior manager, depending on the level of the position. After he's worked in Canada for a year, then he would get an extra 50 points if it's a skill level 0A or B. And if it's a skill level 00, a senior executive level, you can get up to 200 points for that job offer. So congratulations, that's really cool. Okay, let's see. Okay, so Yaya, you have a massively long post here. Let's see if I can summarize it because I want to try and get answers for everybody. Okay, as long as it's not an assessment. I'm just skimming this, so bear with me. Okay, so Yaya, you're actually asking about claiming work history for let's see here. So while working for 2 years, so Nigeria, oh yeah, this is a challenging one. Yaya, this is not something that I can actually give you advice right on the spot without looking into things a whole lot more in more detail. You would actually need to book a consult for me to go through it. And we can definitely do that, and I can give you tips and strategies. I can't tell you how many consults I do with Nigerian citizens who have issues trying to prove their work experience. It's just a nature and a product of that country. So if you'd like to do that, maybe Stephanie, I'll have her just post the link to booking a consult just in the comment section below, and then you guys will be able to see that. And Yahia, if you want to book a consult, then we can go over everything in detail, because I would just hate to give you an answer that was incomplete. It wouldn't be good. And because it's so specific, that's really bordering on giving legal advice. Okay, Davis says, please, when is Express Entry ending? Davis, I just got back from meetings in Ottawa last week where I met with the head government officials, and there was no discussion ever about Express Entry coming to an end. So whoever's spreading those rumors is just fear mongering, and they're probably trying to steal your money to get you into the pool when you don't have a chance of qualifying. That's the crooked, awful agents overseas that are spreading that, who are just trying to line their pockets with your hard-earned money. Okay, so scrap them. All right, Kara Joseph says, does CLB9 give an additional 50 points per applicant? What CLB9 does, Kara, is it gives you extra bonus points. And in some cases, that CLB9 can actually amount to almost 100 points, depending on what it's balanced with. So so it just depends. You have to go to, actually, I'll take a second and I'll just show you this quickly. We'll just type in EE criteria. Let's see, I've got a bunch of stuff going on my screen here. IRCC. So what you'll find out here as we pull it up, at the bottom, after these are the core factors for points. So you'll see here that nothing here really, when it comes down to points, let's see here, make sure I haven't lost my page. Give me 1 second. Okay, so when it comes to language, yes, level of education gives you points straight up for that, but it's really the skill transferability factors down here where it really makes a difference. So if we go down here, you'll see, and I cover this in detail, there's a maximum of 100 points, but I cover it in detail in my course. If you have a CLB9 right here, coupled with at least 2 or more post-secondary credentials, then you can get 50 points there. But it doesn't just stop with education. You go down here and you can also then add in foreign work experience. Actually, sorry, I went too far. Foreign work experience with good language. If you have a CLB9 and 3 years of foreign work experience, you can get another 50 points. So the answer is really it's up to 100 points extra that you can get just by having the CLB9 balanced or coupled with other areas. Okay. All right, Parth, I'm going to have to skip through that question. I'm running out of time. I want to try to answer everybody's. Let's see if there's anyone else who doesn't have it. Yeah. All right. So we are just about out of time. I think I've taken a chance to answer pretty much everybody that had asked at least one question. We are out of time, and I have another consult right now that I have to get to. But I want to thank everybody for participating today. I think this topic of police certificates, people sometimes don't even think that it's important, or they don't give it as much care and attention that it really deserves, because it can mean the difference between you qualifying or not. I want to remind everybody here, next week, we are going to be covering job offers. And this is important for you guys to pay attention to this, because I'm going to talk about what a job offer is and what it is not. I'm going to talk about the scams and the fraud that's out there, the fake things that people are doing, and help you to understand really what it is and how you can truly get points for a job offer. Now, that's with respect to Express Entry. I'm not going to teach you how to get a job offer because I'm not a labor recruiter. I don't work with companies who have open LMIAs. At least I don't have any right now. But I'm going to go over all of that. So the questions that are sent in via email need to be focused on job offers. And then the rest, those who are patient enough to come and join me live, I will make sure that I will at least answer one of your questions. All right. If you, for whatever reason, have a question that just I didn't get to, you can always go and book a consult, and I can answer everything for you. So Stephanie has put a link in the comment section below, so you can click on that and book a consult, and understand that I am not here just to answer questions, but I'm fully prepared and able to represent you fully with your Express Entry application. So I'm not someone who just does consults. I can review your application. We can check your documents. We can do full representation, whatever you need. Just reach out to us. And I think that pretty much covers it for today. So I'll see you guys again here back on May the 23rd, as I see it on my screen, and where we have another awesome EE Live Q&A. It's been a wonderful day, and thank you all for participating. Special shout out to Altynai, who joined me one of Canada's newest permanent residents who went through and shared her story with us of going through, becoming a member of our group, learning tons from all you awesome members. And she actually purchased my Express Entry Complete Step-by-Step Guide to doing it yourself. And that Express Entry guide, that complete step-by-step guide is always available. And at the end, and I'll just pop it up here, at the end of our every one of these EE Live Q&As, I want you guys to realize that if you type in, I wonder if I've got it here still. Yes. If you type in this right here, that code, EEDIY 50%, and I'll just share my screen, even though I've got a bunch of other stuff going on here. If you go to this site right here and you click on enroll in the course and lifetime access, which is usually $497, those of you, and this is not something that I advertise all over the world, those of you who wish to access this, if you type in that code, EEDIY 50%, and apply, you can get the course lifetime access for $248.50. All right. Thanks so much, guys, for tuning in. It was another awesome EE Live Q&A. And this is Mark Holthe, ex-immigration officer, former high school teacher, and current immigration lawyer, signing off, saying thanks for watching another EE Live Q&A. Take care.